And took one of the news stories out too. I didn't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, I saw that. Um, if you think we're gonna run short on time, we can always push gaming history to next week.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I mean, it just depends on how long you think you're gonna go.
Yeah, I've got some pretty good thoughts on Mr. Gex.
All right. I think I have that game for PlayStation. Is there a Gex game for PlayStation 2?
I think the sequel was for PS2,
Hold on. Let
but
me look real
the
quick.
the one I'm reviewing is for PlayStation.
I have one right around the corner from me. Let me look real quick.
Okay.
No, I was thinking of this. There's a game called Vex.
Close.
I still haven't played this
Just
yet. I want to. I just haven't had the time.
Gex, Vex. Now we just need a supernatural game called Hex.
Yeah. And
Okay. Let me pull up the chat.
ooh, hear that thunder? Thunder roll.
Daryl, Daryl, Daryl. Let's see. One of the benefits of growing up in the South, you learn some country songs, whether it's by choice or
Whether
not.
you want to or not, you're gonna learn it.
Yep, it's happening. Okay, I've got the recording going on my end just in case.
Okay. That way, if my power goes out, we'll at least have up to that point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got pretty much everything here. Good to go. Let me. Okay. There we go.
Yep, I've got all the tabs, so I'm ready when you are.
And I don't need to restart loopback, do I? Are you hearing any echo or anything?
Nope, you sound good.
Alrighty. And here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Greetings, programs, and we are back for another episode of the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
And my name is Derek Diamond.
So, how has your week been?
Very busy. I actually had to go to Tallahassee for a couple of days for work. Did that late last week, and yeah, just been doing the movie thing. Shout out to Rampage, who's in the chat. Rampage. Yeah, it's been pretty busy between that, getting stuff ready for the movie, which now we're less than 2 weeks away from shooting, which is kind of scary, just a little bit. But no, I'm excited to do it. We've got pretty much everything all set and in place, so I'm hoping to be completely done with prep by the weekends. That way, I can spend next week just the calm before the storm, if you will.
Yeah, I plan on contacting the old crew for Monsters Anonymous and see if they're interested in doing my next short film, which is a science fiction short film, which might take a good bit of money. But I figured with our Cannes Shorts Festival win, it might help people to open their wallets and their hearts to help me bring my vision to life. So,
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. But what have you been up to this week?
Pretty much the same. Been really busy. Haven't really had much time to game or anything. Honestly, can't even remember what was the last game that I played, honestly, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it.
Yeah, for me, it's I did break down and get Sonic Origins. I was on the fence about it because there are games that, I've played in the past and have been available pretty much anywhere else. But it's like, you know what? I've got a little bit extra money. I want to play the old Sonic games on the Switch. So I broke down and got it.
Yeah, that's a
So
good deal.
Yeah, so been playing that in addition to the game that I will be reviewing this evening.
Awesome. The last game I played was I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake for the PS4, which is excellent, by the way. And hopefully, I'm hoping I can get it done before next week. Maybe if I can. I don't see it happening, but if not, I'm going to review something on the Dreamcast again. Not sure what. Maybe Code Veronica. But I'm aiming to do the Final Fantasy VII Remake. But if I can't get it done before then it'll be Code Veronica.
Could also do some Crazy Taxi.
Yeah, that too. I did play a lot of Crazy Taxi, so I'm not hurting for anything to review. I'm just in the middle of playing so much stuff.
Yeah, for me, I've got to decide what I want to review next. There's a couple of things I want to. It's just like which one do I want to
Yeah.
pick?
And if you guys have any ideas for the top 5 list, since we're doing one a month now, if you have any ideas for a good top 5 list, send them to us at Nerd Cave Retro on Twitter or on the Discord. Just let us give us some ideas because we like doing those top 5 lists.
Yeah, no, they're fun.
And speaking of top 5 lists, Armez Jackson, our friend Armez Jackson, sent us his list. He forgot to send it in before we did last week's show, so I want to shove that in here before we go into the news. And he says, as soon as you guys posted this, I knew it was going to be tough. So many games, the graphics and the gameplay changed so much during this time. It was a pain just narrowing it down so it wasn't all arcade, even though that's where I was from 83 until 94. And his honorable mentions are Star Wars, the Cockpit Arcade, Yi Ar Kung Fu Arcade, Tetris, Outrun's a great one, and Double Dragon Arcade. And Double Dragon is a great arcade game, and I love the NES port of it, but it did not age well. The NES version of it just didn't age well.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for a game of that
yeah,
standard.
But you can get the arcade version now on Switch with the arcade classics, and that's a great game to play. And for his official top 5, his number 5 is Final Fight Arcade. Number 4, Galaga. Galaga was actually on my list at one point, but then it dropped off to make room for other things. Number 3, Legend of Zelda. Number 2, Discs of Tron. He said the environmental cabinet. He'd sell a kidney for one of these. I loved the Discs of Tron game back in the day. I just love those Tron arcade machines. They're so cool looking.
Yeah, we have a local like it's not so much a retro gaming bar, but it's called Play. They have a couple of arcade games and they have an old Tron machine. And I go right to it anytime I go to that bar.
It just beckons you with that glowing blue flight stick, and it's like, play me now.
All it needs is the soothing tones of Jeff Bridges.
Yeah. And then for number 1, Contra for the NES. Great pick there.
Good choice.
Says, thank you, gentlemen. This trip down memory lane was a blast. Keep up the great work, and I'll see you in the chat room from time to time. Thank you very much, Mr. Armez Jackson there. And if you want to be more like Armez Jackson, you can send us some news stories, which brings us to our next segment. You ready to go into the news for this evening?
Yes, sir.
Oop, here we go. Tonight's stories were submitted to us by Carlos Longoria, a.k.a. I Am the Rampage, Armez Jackson, and Mike Evelyn at Jester8082, and Mr. B-Res Coffee himself. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, send them to nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. And this first story comes from arstechnica.com. The Sega Genesis Mini 2 will be in much shorter supply than original. The mini console fad has abated since the NES Classic and SNES Classic peak, with fewer companies giving the concept a shot. Sega remains an exception, however, as it's launching not one but 2 new retro-minded machines by the year's end. The Genesis 2 is coming out in the United States, and Sega confirmed to Ars Technica that the system in question will be incredibly limited supply, around 1/10 the count of the 2019 Sega Genesis Mini. And I don't know how many they put out, for the original Genesis. I know it was quite a bit because those were not as hard to get as the original Nintendo and Super Nintendos. But if they say 1/10, that sounds like there's not going to be that many.
I will give them this though. They are at least forewarning us that there aren't going to be as many, unlike, Nintendo did when we found out there was only what I
Yeah.
don't even remember the exact amount, but it was shockingly low. And it really puts the emphasis on if you want one, you're probably going to
Yeah.
have to pre-order it.
And it says here, since Sega never announced total sales figures for the original Genesis Mini or other regions' Mega Drive Mini sales, we can't accurately estimate how reduced this manufacturing count is. So we don't really know how small the run is going to be. So I would say if you want one, you best go pre-order one right now.
Yep. I'm going to be doing that on Friday
Same
when
here.
my next paycheck comes in.
But that kind of sucks, though. I wish they would just do I don't know why they don't just do a regular run of them. I mean, I know they did well enough to.
Yeah, it's a little mind-blowing because like you said, it sold well. You could find one in stores pretty regularly
Yeah.
when they first came out. There wasn't the hassle to find one like you did the NES or the Super Nintendo. So I don't know. I'm sure they have their reasons. What those are, I have no idea.
Do you think
But
they're taking a page out of Nintendo's book and doing artificial scarcity, or do you think they're just worried that another mini console just won't do as good as the original?
maybe they're testing the waters, and maybe if it sells really well, they'll do another run. Because like you said, the mini console fad is kind of faded.
Yeah. I don't think so,
Really,
though.
ever since that Genesis came out.
Not by Sega. I think if Sega puts out anything at this point, people are going to eat it up.
I think so too. I still think it's going to sell well, and then hopefully they'll see that the demand is there, and they'll advertise another run.
Yeah. Hope
Who
so.
knows? Yeah, I hope so too. But I'm definitely going to pre-order one because I love the Genesis Mini, and I think this one's going to be just as good. Our next story comes to us from one of our favorite sites, NintendoLife.com. At long last, we have a release date for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had enough Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles goodness this year? No. Well, we've got a nice little treat for you. Konami's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection will launch on August 30th. In an exclusive reveal from IGN, we now know that Konami's Turtle games will be following just months after Emu and Tribute Games' fantastic Shredder's Revenge. Turtle fans will be eating plenty of good pizza this summer. In case you didn't know what's included in the bundle, I'll go through these real quick. We have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, the arcade version, the original Ninja Turtles for NES, the NES port of the arcade game, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, TMNT 3, the Manhattan Project, Tournament Fighters, Turtles in Time, the Super Nintendo version, as well as Tournament Fighters, the Hyperstone Heist and Tournament Fighters, which came out for Sega Genesis, Fall of the Foot Clan and Back from the Sewers for the Game Boy, as well as Radical Rescue for the Game Boy as well. I mean, they had me sold when they announced this thing. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't too worried about what they were going to include, but since we have so much in this collection, I think it is an absolute day one purchase,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
cannot wait to play it.
I'm getting a physical copy of this, and I've heard of some of the collector's editions that they're putting out are really cool, but I haven't seen any advertised anywhere.
There was one that we saw a while back because me, you, and Wally talked about it. It was really expensive, but it looked really cool.
Yeah.
I can't remember what all was in it though. I'm probably just going to get the standard version, but I will likely be getting this for the PS4.
Same here. But I don't know. I want to be able to play it in mobile form, so I may get it on the Switch.
True. Yeah, I this is something that I think me, you, and the listeners of the show should all get together and play.
Oh, definitely.
Like like it's an absolute must.
We
Like
could
there's
have
so many great
we
options.
could have another game night and do tournament fighters.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be awesome.
I can get destroyed by everybody because I'm not good at those kind of games, but they're still fun.
It's still fun.
Yeah.
Rampage says, "Don't you dare get it for Switch." I need to get the. I need to get a clip of Cartman going. I do what I want.
I do what I want.
And this next story from PSU.com: Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic remake is reportedly delayed indefinitely. A new report from website. Yeah, boo. A new report from website Bloomberg points to trouble at Aspyr, the studio behind the highly anticipated KOTOR remake. According to the report, Bloomberg has learned that studio heads have told employees the project is on pause, during which time Aspyr will look for other contracts and development opportunities, essentially meaning the game is delayed indefinitely for now. I don't understand why they're putting a hold on it, right? Like, why doesn't Disney step in, throw some money at them, and go get this thing done?
I don't want to say it's dead,
It's dead.
but whenever something is delayed indefinitely, more often than not, that means it's dead.
Yeah. I don't look for
Which
this
is a
thing to
shame
come out.
because I was really looking forward to this. Like,
I
I
was
had fun
too.
going back and playing the original version, when we talked about it on the show a while back. I was really looking forward to this remaster.
Yeah.
And as usual, we can't have nice things.
Can never have nice things.
I hope I'm wrong, and maybe in the next several months we'll hear that it's back on track, but I'm pretty pessimistic about this personally.
Yeah, same here. I think it's pretty much dead in the water.
Yeah. Our last news story comes to us from comicbook.com. Nintendo Insider teases return of fan favorite SNES series. According to a prominent Nintendo insider, a fan favorite series that began its life on the Super Nintendo, F-Zero, is returning with a brand new installment on the Nintendo Switch, Switch Lite, and Switch OLED. The tease comes this way of Skylux Hunter, a Nintendo insider who has proven reliable in the past. Most recently, they leaked the Bayonetta 3 release date ahead of time. And then they teased Nintendo fans with a sequence of ones and zeros. When you translate the numbers into letters into the alphabet, it translates to "you got boost power," which is a term from F-Zero. And we've talked about this, off and on when we've discussed franchises that should be coming back.
Yeah.
F-Zero has been brought up. So I hope this is true because correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't had a new F-Zero game since the GameCube, right?
Wasn't there one for the Wii U? Or am I mistaken? Because I
Let me
thought
see.
we had looked it up and we found what was the last
F-Zero
game. List of F-Zero. Oh,
Let's see.
F-Zero Climax, the last series last game came out 16 years ago.
That was for Game Boy Advance.
That was in 2020, so it was 18 years ago. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's insane.
I don't know why Nintendo has let F-Zero languish because it's such a cool series, and I understand that they have their racer with Mario Kart, but it's such a different tone and a different gameplay than Mario Kart. Like Mario Kart is more of a party game where you've got your little power-ups, you're playing with your friends and you hit them with a blue shell before they cross the finish line, that type of stuff. But with F-Zero, it's a speed anti-grav like single player experience, and that's really what I want. I want to play against it would be fun to play F-Zero as like a multiplayer online game, which I think would be great, but I also want that single player experience with it. And you don't have to have like weapons and stuff in the game. You just, it's just a racing game. But give me options like to customize my vehicles and all that kind of stuff. Like it could be, a future, your futuristic like Need for Speed type of game where you give me those RPG elements where like give me ways to boost the vehicle and all that kind of stuff. I'm in. If they come out with another F-Zero game, I'm in.
Yeah, same with me. I actually really enjoyed the GameCube game, F-Zero GX, when it came out. I didn't play the original as much. My big introduction to Captain Falcon was Super Smash Brothers, but played the GameCube game because of that. Actually, really enjoyed it. I agree with you. I think when it comes to a game like Mario Kart, that's more of like a casual gamer's game.
Yeah.
With F-Zero, I feel like it's a little more geared towards like, the fans of that specific genre. I do think they should add a multiplayer
Mhm.
to have it in case you want it, but I'd like to see a really good story mode
Yeah.
with a racing game because you don't really get that at all.
Because you have Nintendo makes adult oriented games. I mean, like, look at the last Metroid game. That's not a kid's game. That is a full on like scary game for adults. Like, just make an F-Zero game that's aimed towards your older audience, and you'll have a hit on your hands because people love F-Zero. I mean, I still love F-Zero to this day. That was one of the very first games I got for the Super Nintendo when I got it that Christmas. Was I got F-Zero with it, and I've been playing that game. That game's still great, and it still holds up. Just give me a new, modern day version of that.
It's among the numerous franchises that I hope we see make a comeback within the next couple of years.
Yeah,
So who knows? Maybe we'll get an announcement sooner rather than later.
I hope so. So do you think we have time for this month of video game history? Or do you want to save it?
Yeah, we got time.
All right, let's do it. Here we go, right here. In August of 1981, Konami releases Frogger for arcades in Japan. Reminds me of that Seinfeld episode.
Yeah. I Frogger is such a fun game. It has such a simple concept, but when I think of the Game Boy and going to trips to and from Tallahassee during the summer, one of the few games I would play for the Game Boy, I had Tetris, I had the Super Mario Land games, and I had Frogger.
And
And
it's
I'd spend quite a bit of time on Frogger.
another one of those arcade ports that was actually really decent for the Atari 2600.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never played the arcade version, but any console version I've played, I've personally enjoyed. So
Yeah.
I enjoy Frogger. In August of 1985, Atari Games releases Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom as the first System 1 game to feature digitized speech from the 1984 movie. Gameplay involves Indy freeing children from cages, whipping guards and bats, an exciting minecart chase, a temple scene, and a drawbridge scene.
That was a pretty good arcade game. I don't know why they never ported that to any home systems.
You would think they would with as popular as those movies were.
Yeah, I mean, we did get Indiana Jones games, for the Nintendo and the Atari as well, but they weren't this arcade game, which was really good.
It'd be fun to play an Indiana Jones game in the style of like an Uncharted.
Oh, dude. Did you ever play Indiana Jones? And I think it was called The Emperor's Tomb.
No, I never did.
It was for the original Xbox, and it was the same game engine as the Buffy the Vampire Slayer games. That behind it, yeah, I mean, it was a lot like Assassin's Creed, like that type of gameplay. That game was great. I wish they would make more Indiana Jones games like that. That would be awesome.
Make it like Uncharted, and it will sell.
Yep. In August of 1988, Sega releases Altered Beast for arcades, later ported to the Mega Drive Genesis, where it was packaged with the console in North America and Europe. Rise from your grave.
Rise from your grave. Yep, I reviewed this game a while back on the show. Pretty good game. I wish I had played it for the arcade because I feel like that would have been a better experience.
Yeah.
I mean, the console portion was just okay.
Yeah, it's just okay. It's not a system seller. It's like they weren't. Sega wasn't in good shape until Sonic came along.
Yeah, that was one. It was like what I call a volume title, where it's just like this is an option that you can buy.
Like, we need to put something in with it. What do we got? Altered Beast. Yeah, let's just put that in there.
All right, do it.
Let's see.
Let's see.
You're next.
I'm up next. Yep. August 25th of 1994, SNK releases the King of Fighters 94 for arcades. We've never really discussed the King of Fighters games.
No,
It's not to my recollection.
We probably should review one of these days, because I know Brandon Rutledge, our good friend and listener and patron, he wants us to do more fighting games. So I did the last one, so you can do a King of Fighters and see what you think about it.
Yeah, I'll see where I can find it. It says here there is a remake that was released in 2004. It's part it doesn't say. 2008, it was one of 16 games included in SNK arcade classics for the PS2, PlayStation Portable, and the Wii. So maybe I could find a copy of that somewhere.
I bet you there's an arcade archives version of it. You can look up.
Maybe. Yeah. I have to look that up.
August 2nd, 1995, Comic Zone is released for the Sega Genesis. It's a beat-em-up game heavily inspired by comic books. And I reviewed this one off of the original Sega Genesis Mini. And man, this game is awesome, except for the fact that you only have one life. And that's it. You got to get through the whole game in one life.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I remember you talking about this game, and it makes me excited to play it. I will be playing this game pretty soon. It's one of the few games on the Genesis Mini that I have not even attempted, so I look forward to it.
It is severely unforgiving.
Just like I like it. And last but not least, August 1st of 1998, Midway Games releases Gex Enter the Gecko for the N64, and that's all I'm going to say about that game, because you're going to hear more about it in just a little bit.
All right. Well, before we get to that, we have patron shout-outs. Would you like to do the honors?
Of course. As always, we'd like to shout out our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/nerdcaveretro. We want to shout out Daniel Salmon, Tyler Watson, Axeblade07, Armez Jackson, Hand Solo, Carlos Longoria, a.k.a. Rampage, Staff Sergeant Sketch, Gus and Penny, Matthew Salmon, Mike Eveland, Brandon Rutledge, and Mr. Joey Image. Thank you all so much for your continued contributions to the show, keeping the lights on for us here at the Nerd Cave Retro Show. And if you want to be a part of our awesome Patreon community, you get early access to our awesome commentary tracks, like our TGI Friday block that we did for last month, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That brought back some good memories. But we've done, movies such as Clue, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. We've done animated series like X-Men, Batman. If you want to go back even farther, the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. Mm-hmm. We've got still so many great options. And I was thinking about this, and I'll pitch this on the air. I think we should do an episode of Cobra Kai.
I'm down with that. I'm totally okay with that.
I'm getting kind of back into that mindset because the new season comes out next month.
We should do that. Let's do that for this month. We'll do an episode of first episode or two of Cobra Kai.
I love that. We can even do the first episode and then do something else if we want. But I'll throw that out as an option.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, if you want to be a part of our awesome Patreon community, just head over to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro. And for new patrons, be sure to send us your social media info, either Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whichever you prefer, so we can give you a proper shout out.
Fantastic. And tonight, Derek is going to be talking about... So 90s.
Oh, we're going to get into that, my friend. We're definitely going to get into some 90s. That song just makes me want to just kind of sit back in a nice, recliner on the couch with, a nice drink in my hand and just chill. Just chill. But yeah, so I will be reviewing Gex Enter the Gecko, which I just mentioned a few minutes ago. It is a 1998 platform game and the second installment of the Gex video game series, which was surprising to me because I can vaguely remember this game. I knew of it, but really nothing beyond that. I read about it a little bit in the magazines, saw it on the shelves, but I don't know. I think because my mind was on, other franchises and other games that I was playing, that it's just one that I never picked up.
I remember it
And
being advertised pretty heavily, but I never played it.
yeah, it's a product of its time. And that's the big lesson that I learned from playing this game. And I do want to give a quick shout out. So the same anonymous donor that requested you review Final Fantasy VII requested that I review this. So that's why we are here. So you know who you are. So shout out to you for that. Yeah, it was released for the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, Microsoft Windows, and the Game Boy Color. So I knew really nothing about this game. I intentionally didn't read any synopsis, any walkthroughs, or anything. I wanted to put this game in. I played the PlayStation version, by the way. I considered the N64, but I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have to use that controller. And the PlayStation controller isn't my favorite either, but I'll take that over the N64 controller any day of the week.
Yeah.
So it was really a no-brainer. Found a copy here at one of our local retro gaming stores that we have here in town, and I've been playing it off and on over the past several weeks. But anyway, I knew nothing about the storyline. I assumed it was going to be a comedy because you look at the cover and it's a lizard dressed like James Bond. So I'm like, okay, this has to have some type of humor in it. And boy, I was in for a pretty wild ride when it comes to humor. So what I like about this game, I like the humor and I also don't like the humor.
Well, it
So
says that the it was inspired by The Simpsons, on which scriptwriter Rob Cohen had previously worked as a writer. So you got a writer of this game that was a writer for The Simpsons at the time.
And also the voice of Gex, Dana Gould, was a writer for The Simpsons as well.
Oh yeah, I know that name.
Yep. Started as a stand-up comedian,
Mm-hmm.
wrote for The Simpsons, and then he voiced Gex. So Gex is a wisecracking lizard who beats his arch rival. Shoot, what was his name?
Why did
I had it.
everything in the
Rez.
90s have to
Rez.
be wisecracking? Every character's wisecracking.
Wisecracking TV binging gecko is what the Wikipedia page says. So Rez is his rival that he defeated in the first game, and the game begins with it's a couple of years later. He's just sitting at home watching TV, and these two government agents bust in and say that Rez is causing trouble again. So they try to recruit Gex to fight him, but he's like, you know what? I've done that before. I'm good. So what does any government agent do? They offer him a suitcase full of cash and a fancy suit. And he's like, you know what? I'm in.
Well, who
And
wouldn't
I'm
be?
like, how is this game gonna go? Because I'm asking a lot of questions at this point. So the hub world of this game is the media dimension. And your objective is you go into these different worlds, and you go in the worlds by going through these giant television screens. It gave me a little bit of a Banjo-Kazooie vibe in the beginning, because in that game you have to go through like Mumbo's Mountain. You go walk through a giant mountain. You walk through like a representation of the world in order to physically enter it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little bit of a vibe from Banjo-Kazooie there. The first world you go into is inspired by like classic cartoons. And as soon as you enter the world, I'm like, this reminds me a lot of Looney Tunes. And then Gex turns around, looks directly at the camera, and says some kind of random one-liner. And I'm like, God, this is so 90s. So you go through it. The level designs are actually pretty cool. I wish there was a little bit more, but I also think it was part of the product of the time of it, like there weren't too many huge world building games at that time in the platforming genre. So I would have liked a little bit more with that, but I'm like, you know what? This was in the late 90s. It's in that phase where we're still trying to kind of figure out that transition between 2D and 3D because the level designs look cool. The characters, on the other hand, they look a little rough. They could have used a little more polygons.
So is it? I've never played it. I've never seen any video from it. But from the screenshots I'm looking at, is it sort of like a Mario 64 style kind of
Mm-hmm.
open world 3D
Yep. No,
environment?
that's no. And Super Mario 64 was actually an influence in this game being created. So, anyway, I mentioned the Looney Tunes thought. So there's a portion in the Toon world where you have to go down this hole in the ground, and there's a sign next to it, and I kid you not, Jason, it says Wabbit season open. And I'm like, are we really going there? So you dive in the hole, and when Gex materializes, he's wearing a rabbit costume. He looks like Bugs Bunny.
Somebody gonna get sued up in here.
And you see this, and you see these hunters that have like very round bald heads and wearing a distinguished looking hunting cap, and they're just walking around with rifles like bobbing back and forth. And I'm just like, how did they not get sued for
I
this?
mean, I guess they could claim parody. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, you could do that too. And then when you go back later on, because whenever you enter the different worlds, you can choose your different missions. Like, in Mario 64, how you choose the different stars
Yeah.
and they each have the different objective. It's exactly like that. Your objective is you have to find these red remote controls. And the more you find, the more you're able to progress and go back to the media dimension and go to different worlds that are all inspired by different genres. There's a horror one, there's a science fiction one, which in that one, Gex's costume looks dangerously close to a stormtrooper. That one's pretty cool. It's like it has a Star Wars slash Tron kind of vibe, which is actually really cool. And I give them credit because I think the parodies and some of the one-liners are really clever. It does severely date the game though. Like this
Yeah.
is a game that I don't think you could remake it because it's
Well,
truly a product of its time.
that's what I was going to ask. Do you think if they were to do like a remaster of the game, do you think it would do well, or is it just strictly a game entrenched in the 90s and that's where it needs to stay?
It's a game entrenched in the 90s and that's where it needs to stay. I think the only way that you can make it work is if you gave it almost like a modern day twist, maybe, whereas like Gex is older and he mentors like a younger lizard who, I don't know, parodies a lot of memes and gifs that you see online, but I don't think that would honestly sell really well.
I
So
just
I
don't think there's a whole lot of nostalgia for Gex.
No, but you know what? Had I played this game when it was originally released, I would have loved it because I like that type of humor. Because you remember in the 90s how like referencing pop culture and
Yeah.
almost kind of breaking the fourth wall was a thing.
Well, all
It-
thanks to Kevin Smith, who was just like, it's okay to like pop culture. And then from then on, it was like pop culture referencing pop culture everywhere.
yeah, and they blatantly take quotes from certain movies. So like for example, in the horror world, as you're walking through the stage and completing your objectives, Gex will say these different one-liners, and there's so many that I keep thinking, how did they get away with
Well,
this?
you might have
But
been
they're
able to get away with a lot more back then, too, because it was a lot different then. Like, you look at Roger Rabbit. That movie. I mean, you could make an argument that Rescue Rangers is the modern day Roger Rabbit, but how many millions of dollars did Disney have to spend to get all the characters in that movie? Like back then, you could just kind of get away with this type of stuff without being sued into out of existence because you could at least claim parody.
That's another reason why I think this game would not be made today, because just the rights for all this stuff would just cost way too much money.
And especially with all the Looney Tunes stuff now that all that's under the HBO Max banner. Like if you did something like that now, HBO Max would sue you out of existence.
Yeah, you would be gone like that. So I'm walking through the horror world, and all of a sudden Gex starts going, red rum, red rum. And I'm like, that's funny, but you should still totally get sued for that.
Yeah.
But there's some other cool parodies too. So there's like an Eastern culture slash karate world where Gex wears a karate gi. There's like so one of the bonus levels is almost like an Aztec or like a temple style objective,
Mm-hmm.
and you wear an Indiana Jones costume. My favorite is when you fight a mechanized version of Rex, and he looks not all that different because he's primarily a robot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing is that Gex grows really tall, so it's almost like you're parroting a Godzilla fight. So in that aspect, like I loved the parodies. I thought they were really clever. It brought me back to a much simpler time. However, there were some jokes that were made that, we're a much more progressive culture now, and I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
this there's the first reference that I heard Gex say was something like it smells or looks like the inside of Boy George's pants. And I'm like,
What?
oof,
What does that even mean?
I don't know, but I'm like, you couldn't say that today. Like
No.
you'd get like that game would get canceled in a heartbeat. And there's other like, stereotypical stuff that happens throughout the game that I'm just like, granted it was a different time, it doesn't excuse it, but it's like you're so much more sensitive to stuff like that that it makes much more of an impact when you see it,
Yeah.
and so that kind of took me out of it, for a bit. But as far as the gameplay itself, it's pretty simple. Gex has got some pretty basic attacks, like you flick your tongue to eat bugs, to like replenish your health and get extra lives and whatnot. You've got a tail whip, and also a flying karate kick. You can climb certain walls. And then what else is that? There are some outfits you have that are like objective based. So for example, there's a level where you have to dive underwater, and you have to find different collectibles to replenish the oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
Also the same thing for a space world that you have to go to. So for the most part, you just kind of go in each world, you try and find these red remotes. You can find some silver ones after collecting a certain number of items. Each game or each world has its own like unique collectible, and once you get those, you get the silver remotes, and it basically just gets you one step closer to 100%.
So
What's really cool is,
do you get to start on any level you want, or do you have to go in a certain level and get the remote, and that opens up the next world?
you have to start in the Toon world, and then from there, once you get more, you have more options to go, like to the horror world or then to the sci-fi world and whatnot. So
And I love some of the names of these levels, like Lava Dabba Doo, Texas Chainsaw Manicure, Mazed and Confused, and my favorite, I got the reruns and Trouble in Uranus.
Again, something that was right out of the 90s. But overall, and I've come very close to beating this game. It does get significantly harder as you get towards the end. I've made it to the final boss. I have not been able to beat him yet. So I've, for the most part, completed the game. I will say that it's not a great game. It's a good game. Like it plays fairly well. I like the level designs. I think they were a little bit ahead of their time as far as being in the late 90s. There are some games that are better, that are similar, that were made around that time, but it's still pretty good. However, I think it's when we talk about games that are ultimately a product of their time, this is a prime example of that. Like when I say, I can't stress this enough, if you want a 90s nostalgia trip, you should definitely check this out.
Play this and then Pepsi Man.
Hey, that's a great Friday night at the Diamond household.
Yeah.
But yeah, I particularly enjoyed playing it, minus the couple of jokes that I thought were like, they wouldn't have gotten away with those today.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I can actually say I enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something I'm going to go out
I
of
don't
my
think
way
you
to
would
play.
I don't think you would enjoy it personally. I think you'd get into it for a few minutes and then be like, I'm good.
I personally just, other than Mario 64, I really don't like platformers in this era from 96 to 2000. Like that 4 year span of platformers just doesn't do it for me. Plus, the controls weren't there, the camera movements weren't there, and they're just so hard to control, and it just I don't like it.
And that's something too that I did not like about this game, and that's again a product of that era. It's like all the platformers couldn't figure out the camera.
Yeah.
Mario 64 was the only one that did it. And all these other games tried to mimic Mario 64 gameplay wise, but for some reason they didn't adopt the camera method.
Yeah. I mean, then once you got to, 98, 99, you had the dual analog sticks with the original PlayStation, which came out. You had the dual analog sticks, and it's like it's intuitive to make the right stick the camera. Move with the left stick, the right stick controls the camera. I don't know why it took 2 to 3 years to figure that out. Like, there's so many games that are just ruined because of that little aspect.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't really until like 2001, 2002 where the 3D platformers really started to figure it out. But it didn't totally take away from the experience, but that was one thing that I was kind of expecting going in, because when I saw the copyright that you see at the beginning of the game, and I was like, this game's probably going to have its flaws when it comes to that, but it didn't totally break the game for me. It was frustrating though.
Yeah. That's what breaks a lot of these games for me, is just because you're so used to now the controls we have in a 3D environment, and then you go back to this and it's just so primitive.
Yeah, it it can be rough to go back and play some of these games. But I did want to tell you some of the other level titles, since you'll get a kick out of these. So for Toon TV, you had Out of Tune and Fine Tuning.
Mm-hmm.
For the Scream TV, you had Smell Razor, Frankensteinfeld, and Poltergex.
I think I might be
level.
Frankensteinfeld for Halloween. That sounds like a good mashup costume.
What's the deal with the electricity? What's the deal with the bolts coming out of my neck? So for one other thing I forgot to mention, the Nintendo 64 version wasn't like, they didn't have as many levels as the other versions did because of hardware limitations, but it did have one exclusive level that was a knockoff of the Titanic that was called Gex Cousteau, which there's a picture of him doing the pose where he's on the front of the boat and he's got his arms spread out.
Of course.
Yeah, because why wouldn't it be? There's Circuit Central, which is a circuit-based, futuristic theme channel. Kung Fu Theater, which I mentioned is patterned after Kung Fu movies. There's Rocket Channel, which is a space/sci-fi theme. Those levels are called The Umpire Strikes Out and Pain in the Asteroids.
I've had that before.
Yeah, right. To go back and mention the Kung Fu ones, there's Mao Zedong, and Samurai Night Fever, which in that one you also wear a disco
I
costume,
like
which
it.
people could probably guess. There's the Prehistory channel, which is a prehistoric slash dinosaur themed channel in which Gex blatantly says, "Welcome to Jurassic Park."
Of course he does.
There's Pangea 90210 and This Old Cave. And then the final boss fight in Resopolis is called No Weddings and a Funeral.
Nice.
So I dig that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the era I grew up in. I remember that style of humor, when everything had to be parody. Like you mentioned, Kevin Smith made it okay to talk about pop culture and things that were going on in the real world. And then the floodgates opened and we had games like this. We had shows and whatnot that, patterned itself after that.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody that's probably younger than me, you won't like it. You won't get the humor, and you'll just be like, "Oh, this is stupid,"
Yeah.
and you'll turn it off.
I don't know
If
if
you,
that even that type of humor would even really work today. Like if you were to put this game out with new references in it, I just don't know if that just I don't know if that flies today.
yeah, this was kind of a weird mix between Looney Tunes, Roger Rabbit, Banjo Kazooie, and Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does have some borderline adult humor, like not to the extreme of Bad Fur Day, but it pushes the envelope. And this game was rated E,
Yeah.
but Gex uses profanity on occasion. Like he also says, "Get your paws off me, you damn dirty ape." And this was rated E. Like you marketed it to kids.
Yeah. But
Again, a product of a different time.
just because I think pop culture is so splintered these days into little tiny pockets of stuff, with influencers and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if there's the big overarching like pop culture stuff that you could pull from that everybody would get. Like everybody got these jokes back then, but now I don't know. You make one joke and like 75% of the audience like doesn't even know what you're talking about. It's just such a weird culture these days.
It's a very different time. I mean, I feel like culture is different than it was, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
much less 30 something. So, yeah, again, I just don't think this game would really work today. Let's see. Let me go back to my page here. I got too many tabs open. Uh, as far as the reception, Gex Enter the Gecko received mostly positive reviews. Aggregate review website Game Rankings gave the PlayStation version an 82%. The N64 version received mostly mixed reviews. Game Rankings gave that a 61%. The PC version, though, USA Today gave it 4 out of 5 stars and said it was a must-own for platform fans. A Game.exe reviewer gave the game a 70% score and said that it lacked attention to detail and care. And a Game World Navigator reviewer praised the graphics, noting the backgrounds are detailed, but noticed that the monsters have few polygons. I 100% agree with that. Let's see. Game World Navigator gave it a 6.6 out of 10. Let's see. Next Generation gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So overall, as I said, I like the game. I appreciate the humor because it's from my time. Gameplay wise, it's not perfect, but I also don't think it's terrible. Like it's a game that, I'd pick up every now and then and play and wouldn't really have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I I would say I'd give it probably a six and a. Well, I'll give it a seven. I'll give it
Yeah.
an average. Like seven's about an average
Yeah.
to me because I'm usually pretty generous with the score. So I'd give it a solid seven.
I mean,
It's got some.
it sounds like something that you'd have fun going back and playing, but I don't see this as something you would play like all the time.
No, it'd be fun to pop in and be like, oh, remember, those references or
Yeah.
something like that. But it's not something that I'd, come home from work every day to play. But I did enjoy the fun trip down memory lane, and as I said, reminded me of a much simpler time. So
Awesome.
those are my thoughts on Gex Enter the Gecko.
Well, coming up next week, like I said, if I can get done with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I will review it next week, but that's going to be pushing it. But if not, then I'm going to review something for the Dreamcast. And thank you to our good friend Joey Image for sending me the Dreamcast, and go follow him, Joey Image TV, pretty much everywhere. And go check out his YouTube channel if you're into the Dreamcast. He did an unboxing of a Dreamcast he got last year, where a friend of his sent him one that was still unopened, fresh off the factory floor, and he did an unboxing video for it. So go check him out over there at Joey Image TV on YouTube.
Absolutely. He's a great follow.
But anything going on with feature presentation before we leave tonight?
Yeah, it'll be back next week at its normal time, 8 p.m. Central Time on YouTube. You can follow the show on social media at FeaturePresPod. I'll be chatting with Zach Hamilton, who was one of the visual effects designers on Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Strange New World. So that'll be a fun chat.
Awesome. And go check us out at Open Micers on Twitter and Instagram. Last week we talked with comedian Eddie Kane, and then coming up this next month, we have a bunch of famous comedians coming on the show. Starting tonight, we have Andrew Chavon coming on the show, and go check it out whenever. This one's going to drop on Wednesday, but just go check out the show. Open Micers, pretty much everywhere fine podcasts are given away for free. So I think that's going to do it for this week. Anything else before we slide out the door?
Real quick, if you want to follow the development on my short film, it's at The Feature Movie on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And don't forget to send us your voicemails at anchor.fm/nerdcaveretro, and I will play them at the end of the show. And with that being said, let's get out of here. You can send us an email at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. Go to nerdcaveretro.com. We'll take you to our link tree. We'll take you everywhere you need to go. The Twitter, the Instagram, the Facebook, the web, our merch page. But if you just want to go to the merch page, go to ncrmerch.com. Go get yourself a Planet Juice t-shirt or a mug or anything. Anything you need over there, ncrmerch.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter at NerdCaveRetro, and individually at JFunktastic and at Derek_Diamond. And of course, patreon.com/NerdCaveRetro, where as little as $1 a month keeps the lights on here at the show. And of course, you can't do that. I understand times are tough. Leave us a review, please, wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. So Derek, please tell them what it's all about.
May the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
Yes.
Oh, a fellow checker, eh?
And that's an episode.
We made it through without your power going out.
Yeah, no, it's nice. The thunder stopped, so maybe the storm rolled through. I hope
it's probably
so.
Heading my way. It's rained like
Probably.
every day here for like the last 2 months.
So it'll probably get to you in about a couple of hours, so keep an eye out.
Good sleeping weather.
So thank you guys for watching on Twitch. I'll be back in 30 minutes for Open Micers, and thank you everybody on YouTube that's going to be watching, and we'll see you guys next week.